So in this video, we're going to take a look at a few interesting things in the source code that we can pick out and see how we can leverage them to our advantage in this pen test. So where I typically like to start in this case is in the login activity, because login is typically a very good place to start attacking. If we can find vulnerabilities in the login, it's really beneficial to us. So looking at the login code, we might be able to pick out interesting pieces of information and to sort of, save you on the boring details of reading through every line of code. I've picked out a few interesting components that I've noticed, and I'm going to demonstrate to you how we notice these things and what we're able to do with them once we notice them. So the first thing that I've noticed in this login activity is this get resources here. So you'll see here that when we create the login form, it's showing us what's actually being built through when we actually load the login form. So as you can see here, what we do is we set up the login form with all the different buttons. And there's one particular button here that says get resources.getString isAdmin equals no, and it sets the visibility of this to 8 in this case. What this is doing is it's saying if your isAdmin setting is set to no, it makes this create user button not visible. The reason why this is interesting to us is that obviously if they're trying to hide things from us on the form creation, they're probably something that we shouldn't be able to access. So if we can find a way to access them, this could be something that could lead to a vulnerability. So this is one of the things that I typically look for when I'm going through a pen test is when we create this, are we doing anything that we're trying to hide specific pieces from specific users? And then asking, is there a way for me as an unauthorized user to gain access to that information? So that's one thing that we can take a look at in this. And obviously we can take a look at other pieces of information. We have the information of how we filled the data. We have this information about create user, which is actually associated with this piece here because you can see the button is create user. So we can sort of follow through and see the button is create user. It sort of goes through and it builds up that logic. On click, it runs the create user functionality. So it seems like we can create a user if we are an admin. Now the question is, how do we become an admin? And if we take a look at this code, it says get resources.getString. Now, if we take a look at the resources section here, you'll see that there are actually resources associated with this application. There's a lot of different resources associated with this application. Typically, when we're taking a look at this, we're looking for the strings component of the resources because it's get resources.getStrings. It's actually a fair bit easier to see this through the APK tool version of the decompilation. So let's take a look at that. I have this here, my Insecure Bank v2. Inside of here, there's a res folder, and this holds all of the resources associated with this project. So you can see that there's a lot of different resources that are associated with it. When we're looking for ones that are typically used by the program, we could take a look at really all of these, but specifically values is a good place to start. Inside of values, you have this strings.xml. And this is associated with getStrings. When we run getStrings, we're getting it from the strings.xml file in the resources. Let's go ahead and edit this file and see what's inside of it. You can see here there's a whole bunch of different text available, and these are just hard-coded strings that are used in the application. And if we scroll through this, if we get far enough down, we'll see this isAdmin, which is associated with the one that I was looking at in the code. And you can see it's set to no. So just as a fun example, let's set it to yes and see if we can make that work. So I'm going to set that to yes. And then what I'm going to do is I just save that and we'll close it and we'll go back out here and we're going to go ahead and build a copy of Insecure Bank v2. When this builds, it goes into this dist folder here. And this is the example from when I built it before in the last video. So I'm just going to delete it so that I don't get them confused. And in order to build this, we're going to do as we did before. Let me just exit out of this here. And I'm going to cd into the directory of where the APK tool is. And what we'll do is we'll do apktool.bat, and we're going to build the version with Insecure Bank v2. Now when we build this, it's going to have that isAdmin flag set to yes instead of set to no. So we're going to be able to install this and potentially gain access to that admin feature. So what happens is when we build it, it goes into this distribution folder, which is inside of the folder that the APK tool builds when it first decompiles the app. And this is our new modified APK. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to move it out here, And I'm going to replace the one that already exists here. And we actually have to sign this APK, right? I mentioned before that we need to sign any APK that we recompile so that it's able to be installed on the Android app. So in order to do this, we say java-jar sign.jar, and then we put in the name of the app, which is insecurebankv2.apk. In this case, I don't think it's named sign. It's named sign 1.0.jar. So let me just modify that. It should be sign-1.0.jar. There we go. Once we do this, it will sign our APK for us. It doesn't really give us any sort of output. If it doesn't say anything, then we know it's been successful. And you see that it creates this .s.apk. This is the signed version of the APK. So now we can go forward and actually install this onto our device. So I'm going to start by going onto my device here, and I'm just going to uninstall the version that I currently have because I want to overwrite it with this new version. So I'll uninstall that version. And then here I'm just going to go adb install insecurebankv2.s.apk. You want to make sure to get the signed version of it, which is the .s.apk. If you've done this correctly, it should install successfully. And now I can go in and I can open up the app. And you can see, again, it asks me for permissions because this is a fresh install of the app, so we can press continue. I'll press OK here. And you can see we now have this create user button. We didn't have this before, but now we have it. So as you can see, we've gained access to something we shouldn't be able to gain access to. So this is a nice vulnerability here that we found. The main ideas that we want to think about once we've found a vulnerability, so once we want to report this vulnerability, we have to have an idea of what the impact of this is. Clearly, this is a local vulnerability that we're able to exploit. We're able to exploit it via altering the APK. And what it does is it allows an unprivileged, unauthenticated user to be able to create a user if the functionality was actually there. So this means that we can actually create a user without any valid permissions, which is a rather severe vulnerability. So this is the general idea of what we can do in terms of being able to modify our source code. We'll take a look at a few more examples of this, but this is just one good example of being able to potentially expose a feature using permissions that are set through that resources directory.